G'day and welcome back to the Talking Leadership podcast series. Today is the fourth panel discussion and I'd like to thank Deb Gray for helping me organise today's panel session. If you haven't already, please listen to Deb's podcast which was released last week. Great discussion, and Deb helped me to build the panel for today's discussion, which included Kate McBride, Elle Moyle and Holly Ludeman. It was a great discussion, fantastic set of issues to discuss from a Australian agriculture perspective, and as far as that goes, we looked at 4 key topic areas which included my guests' leadership pathways, their definitions of leadership challenges and opportunities from their industry context, that being the agriculture sector, and leadership and gender. Hope you enjoy today's discussion. By way of introduction, I'd like to start with Deb Gray. Deb, how are you?
I'm good, Eric. How are you? Thanks for having us.
I'm good. Thank you for joining me and thank you for helping me to organise this. So I'll introduce you first, Deb. Deb Gray is a beef producer in the Araloon Valley, located in the southern tablelands of New South Wales. She's completed a diploma in agriculture through Tokal College. Since the Black Summer bushfires of 2020, she's focused on regenerative agriculture, and she's recently enrolled in a university degree to study a Bachelor of Science majoring in regenerative agriculture. So thank you again for joining us, Deb. I'd like to welcome Holly Ludeman to the podcast. How are you, mate?
Good, thanks, Eric. Great to be here.
And thank you for joining me. So Holly has completed a Bachelor of Agricultural Science at La Trobe University and a Bachelor of Veterinary Medicine and Surgery at Murdoch University in WA. She's worked in mixed and equine practice before moving to various roles across the livestock export industry. She's the founder and managing director of the Livestock Collective. The not-for-profit company was developed in 2019 out of a crisis and critical need to improve the Australian community's connection and understanding of the livestock export industry. My third guest today is Kate McBride. How are you, Kate?
Good, thanks.
Thank you for joining me. So Kate is a 5th-generation farmer from Western New South Wales. She was born and brought up on a 500,000-acre sheep property located in the Lower Darling Barker River. She became a Healthy River ambassador, working towards a better water management outcome in the Murray-Darling. As a result, Kate's become a voice for regional Australia and has become an advocate for other issues facing country Australians, such as mental health, lack of services and climate change. She's completed a Bachelor of Commerce at Adelaide University and has begun a Master's in Global Food and Agricultural Business. And Kate has joined the independent think tank, the Australia Institute, researching water and rural issues, and has recently become the Parliamentary Liaison for that institute. So our final panel member for today is Elle Moyle. She is a farmer, vet and company director. She graduated from Charles Sturt University in 2014, has worked overseas in the Middle East and the US and in Australia in private practice throughout South Australia and northern Queensland. She's involved in the family business Pathfinder Angus stud, which sells over 600 bulls annually across Australia. She's been named Australian Cattle Council Victorian Rising Champion and the finalist for the Xander McDonald Award, alumni of the National Rural Women's Coalition, member of the Australian New Zealand College of Veterinary Scientists and graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. I'd like to welcome my panel to the podcast today. Thank you for being here with me. And I think to start things off, I'd like to start by asking you each about your leadership pathway. So I might start with Holly. Holly, over to you.
Oh, thanks. Well, what a powerhouse we have on the panel, and it's great to be here with such amazing women. I think I remember doing some leadership workshops, and it's a bit, difficult to describe what you think leadership is when you didn't see yourself as a leader. So I think my leadership pathways have been, in the last few years, like taking time to step back and look at what's been achieved and how I've done that. And I think it's really been for me around the power of collaboration. I'm a collaborator by nature. I love bringing people and organisations together. So being able to do that, and I really live by lifting others up, will help, my own journey. I think that linked around the ability to create trust and networks of people as well. So I suppose that's my definition of leadership in a nutshell. And a lot of these guys have been part of that journey, or this group here around us creating the Livestock Leaders program. And that was really about my passion to empower the supply chain within the livestock industry.
Thank you, Holly. Before we go on in terms of defining the panel's pathways around leadership, let me ask you, when you say potentially you considered yourself, correct me if I'm wrong here, a reluctant leader?
Maybe it was reluctant to stand up and say, that I was being a leader. But I think out of the crisis situation that I was in, or that, led to the Livestock Collective forming, for example, I was definitely showing leadership in the ability to step forward where no one else wanted to step forward, take the, brave move to, be in the media, talk openly about what the industry I was working in, which was livestock export, which was very controversial at the time. So, at the time I didn't think of it as leadership, but you look back and, it definitely was stepping forward to a challenge and helping others come with me.
Thank you for that. So was it more a light bulb moment for you, or did somebody sort of make it known to you, you did a really good job leading us through a difficult time, or was it a mix of those things?
I think it was a mix, and then having to do things like this, like podcasts or news articles, or getting feedback, and it kind of, you're having to talk about how you did things and why you did things, and that self-reflection as well has definitely come into it.
Before we move on, and I don't want to not ask this because it's become more apparent to me that, from my estimation, this is only my view of this, that the more effective leaders that we'll run into in our careers are self-reflective practitioners. So did you seek that feedback to try and understand what you did and why you did it?
I think this leadership journey I've been on the last few years has been very much in the public domain. So there was a lot of feedback coming to me through multiple mechanisms, whether it was, social media, text messages from farmers saying thank you for stepping forward, even media outlets saying thank you for giving us access to information. So I've had a lot of feedback from various mechanisms that I suppose assisted that self-reflection.
Yeah, there's a story there. I reckon there was a lot of wanted and unwanted feedback coming your way. So thank you for sharing, Holly. So Kate, can I ask you, your leadership pathway, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I feel like I was quite similar to Holly, really. I never saw myself as a leader, but then you sort of look back at, through school and things like that, there was the odd thing that came up and you're like, I suppose it was sort of showing a little bit of leadership potential there. And when I say that to people that know me and have known me for a really long time, they're like, Kate, we always knew that you could be a leader. But then we had some really catastrophic issues happen with our darling Barker, so the river that runs through Tilano out in Western New South Wales. And so when that happened, it was really a time where it was sort of thrust on me. And all of a sudden we had to do like a lot of media, and there was a lot of coordinating stuff going on, and there was a lot going on. And I sort of stepped up, as did a lot of people in our community. We were really lucky. But it's interesting how these like catastrophic events often create leaders. And I think after that, it's like a realization of, okay, I can do this and I can actually be effective in that. And so what can we do to actually help more people in that space? And so I suppose that's sort of been like what I've been doing over the last few years, is trying to broaden that out. And Holly's work with the Livestock Collective has been amazing, because I'm constantly going and trying to learn and meet people and sort of broaden my understanding of, what leadership is and what the type of leader that I am. So doing all these like programs to try and keep developing those skills, and the Livestock Collective were amazing. I'm a livestock leader as well, as a result of Holly's incredible work. And I think it's really incredible in the ag industry, where people really do try and sort of, create opportunities for people to network and meet with each other, but then develop their skills as well. And like Holly giving back in a way of creating the Livestock Collective is really special. And I think the ag industry is lucky to have people like her around.
Thank you for that, Kate. And did you find that you were looking or had mentors available to you as part of your process? Because I get the impression, not just from this conversation, but from others I've had, it often takes a crisis to get people to step up and do things and become the leaders that they probably were, but didn't have an opportunity to demonstrate those leadership skill sets. So did you find you could reach out to a network of people? And is that typical for the farming community in Australia, to look for colleagues to help out? Is that typical practice?
No doubt. And I think it's not just in farming, but in general, often when you're going through a leadership sort of journey, people say find a mentor and find someone you can chat to. What I found quite interesting for me is one mentor hasn't worked for me. Like, I surround myself with a great deal of mentors that I go to for advice and feedback. And I think that's because I wear a number of different hats. I work for a think tank, but then also a farmer, I'm an environmentalist. I think, and a lot of the women in ag seem to do that as well. We wear all these different hats. So it doesn't really fit having one mentor to go to for everything, but having mentors all over the place and being able to, something might happen politically. And so I've got got mentors that I will seek advice for them for that area, but then, you know, something comes up in ag and I'm not going to go to that same person. So I think having got quite a broad base of mentors, and it's something that I feel really fortunate about, as I've had a lot of people help me over the years, particularly as like a young female coming up through the ranks. There's a lot of people that are willing to take you under their wing. And I think really like leaning into that wing and using them as a mentor and like seeking feedback and advice as much as you can is really important. So yeah, totally. Mentors are so important.
Brilliant. Okay, Elle, can you give us a sense of your leadership pathway there, please?
Mine has been fairly sort of just a natural progression of things. So yeah, like back when I was younger, it was, you know, leading a sports team, being a captain or something like that. And then I was quite lucky in a couple of the jobs I've had, they've been really promoted professional and personal development. And so I did a heap of those sort of professional development courses because I was managing staff. And so they really encouraged you to do that. And I learned so much, you know, by doing a couple of those, which really like gave me heaps of self-reflection on the things I can, you know, improve to be a good leader and you know, and bad habits to drop off. I found that really good. And that probably really amplified my sort of leadership journey. And then just like Kate said, like having a massive network of mentors who I've sort of picked up along the way over the last, 10 years in the industry. They're the sort of people that I'll lean on. You know, it would be almost once a day I'd call one of them or they'd call me for some sort of advice and vice versa. So I'm glad you didn't ask me this question even like a year ago, because I just don't like it. Lots has happened in the last couple of years and I wouldn't have considered myself a leader, you know, even a year or two ago, because it is a long journey to sort of reflect back and make an impact.
People can do a lot of the leadership process, but never consider themselves leaders. And that label sometimes comes with things attached that do you necessarily have to be a CEO or a general manager or some formal title to think of yourself in that way. And yeah, it's interesting that you also bring up the element of time. So if you're saying 12 months ago, I would have thought some other stuff, but now I'm thinking this. Isn't it funny how much experience over even a short amount of time can make you see things different? Now, when you say that, was that prompted in some ways by what you learnt from other leaders?
No, I mean, people in the last few years, people have been sort of like indicating that's what I've been doing, and I suppose a bit of self-reflection that I have made some impacts along the way, but I got put forward to a few new roles, and that sort of made me reflect on like maybe I am doing something. Yeah, I know it's kind of a hard one because you don't really want to be tall poppy syndrome or anything. Like you don't really shout about it, but it's sort of just quietly reflected on by yourself and sort of come to that realization.
This is definitely an Australian trait. You can't big note yourself too much or someone's going to chop your legs out from under you.
Especially being a girl in ag.
Thank you, Elle. All right, Deb, your turn, mate. Leadership pathways. What can you share with us?
I didn't even realise that I could become a leader in ag until the bushfires went through, actually, and I'd been farming for nearly 20 years by that point. And to get through one of the worst droughts that, we'd ever seen, I wasn't around for the drought of the 80s, but this one was, I'll throw that in there. But this one was horrific to go through. And as Kate would have known from her experience, down where she is, it was just to get through it mentally, physically, emotionally, it was heartbreaking. And then to have the fire come through and destroy what you had left, I was ready to pull the pin. I just was ready to put the for sale sign out the front and quit ag, quit farming, quit it all. And anyway, I ended up pulling myself together and let's try something different. And I put my hand up for every opportunity that was out there at the time. And I ended up getting involved in a program that the MLA were running at the time, and it was the Back to Business program. And they put you in touch with a farm consultant, ag advisor, for 3 days, and he would come in with fresh eyes, and he actually helped me get excited about farming and see farming in a different perspective. And because we had such success together on that program, there was an article that The Land then wrote. I did a podcast. I'd never done any media work by that point. And then a couple of weeks later, Holly's Livestock Collective found me and put me in on the next course that they were doing for the New South Wales inductions to livestock leaders. And from then I realized that, being a leader, it's not just forging a path. It's like the other girls have said, it's about building up a team together, and it's forging together. And it's something I never, ever would have thought I would have been involved in. But now I'm happy to talk to anyone about ag. And I know not much out there compared to what, some of these girls know. I'm just a simple farmer with my cows in my valley, but if I don't know the answer, look at the powerhouse that I've got sitting here with me today. I can find the answer. I can point you in the right direction. And that's, to me, how it started. And now, I go and spend a couple of weeks at the Easter show every year and talk to people about ag and tell them where their meat comes from and tell them about the industry. And it's a great role to have as a leader.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a love for your industry, and that's a good thing to hear. Eerily familiar what you said. Oh, I'm just a farmer. I get that from fisher folk all the time. We're only fisher people. And you're like, no,
just a farmer.
Got some, yeah, there are some skill sets that city folk have no idea about. And I think communicating that to the community about what farming is, what agriculture is important. Interesting to hear in the public debate is there's a lot of discussion around what food security means, yet most of the population have no idea where their food comes from. I'll put this to the panel, and we've set the groundwork around your leadership pathway, but Holly, I might start with you. Defining leadership, what does that mean for you?
And I suppose you define it through your own experiences. I think for me, it is the ability to bring people together and put other people before yourself or for the greater good, which is what I'm really passionate about. And that's not always easy, which I'm sure you'll get into, like the challenges we have faced in our leadership journey. But I think for me, leadership is collaboration and lifting other people up to be the best version of themselves they can be.
It seems communication, collaboration are important. Is there anything else that you've seen from the leaders that you've dealt with that's important to you?
I think you have to be able to make tough decisions and have difficult conversations as well. And that's often part of my role with one of the other hats on, and showing leadership is often having to step into the areas where others don't want to step into and be confident in those difficult conversations and difficult situations.
Yeah, it's a part of the leadership process that nobody likes, is that you have to be potentially the final decision maker on some things, and that can come with some issues. So, yeah, fully understand. Kate, your definition of leadership. And again, there's no right answer here. I'm looking for there is no perfect answer. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the podcast. So how do you define the process?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like growing up, I thought of leadership as, the loudest, or not loudest person in the room, but, a vocal person in the room that sort of like, really stands out. And I've come to really realize that often, the best leaders in the room aren't the ones that are actually having their voices heard. It's really about empowering other people and trying to get the best out of the people that are around them, pretty much exactly like Holly said. It's also as I've been learning about leadership and, the different types of leaders that we have come out, like I think the importance of recognising your own leadership style, that there's good and bad in all of them, and sort of, working on your strengths and weaknesses. But then also when different situations come up, what you've got to be acting in. And, like if there's an emergency, you don't want someone that's like an over-consultative person that's going to sort of, what does everyone in the room think that we should do right now? You want someone that's going to step into that role and be like, this is what we need to do right now to, sort whatever problem you've got out in front of you. And so I think recognising that people can change their leadership styles depending on what's going on as well. So yeah, I feel like that's not like a definition of leadership, but it's how I've sort of come to learn about it, and that we're constantly, like we're always shifting. And as we develop as people, we're also changing our leadership styles as well.
Yeah, perfectly good response. Elle, your definition of leadership?
Not much to build on from those guys. They really summed it up well. But I don't know. But I did hear one guy say something really profound. Well, I found it quite profound. And he was a leader of a big corporation. And he said that like the way that he has, the way a good leader should lead is with zero self-interest. And it is all about the people around you. So I thought, when I reflect, like they're the leaders and managers and whoever who I've really trusted and followed, like loyally followed, is the ones you can see who are doing it for everyone else and doing it for like the greater cause. So I suppose that's really all I can add to that.
Yeah, I love that. Zero self-interest. That's a very self-actualized human being that can do things without any self-interest, particularly in the leadership space. And I'm sure we've all met leaders that are the complete opposite of what you've just given us there as a definition. So thank you. All right, Deb, your definition?
My definition of leadership, I guess it's a bit similar to what Kate was saying. You think of a leader and, you think of your high school captains, and you think of, as you move through your life, the leader is always the person that takes the charge, is the noisy one, is the one that makes the headway. But when I sit back now and I look at leadership, and I see Holly doing this amazing job with a not-for-profit, and like Elle said, she's got no financial gain in this. It's all about the industry. It's about the people that she works with. And that to me is the leadership. We're not, really famous people out there. We're people that are doing what we do for the love of our industry. And every time we post on a social media, or every time we put something out there, we do get a lot of backlash at times, from different groups and different activist groups and things like that. But we're forging ahead and we're leading our own path, believing in our industry and doing what we do because we love it. So that to me makes us all great leaders on this panel.
Maybe it's passion. Maybe we've all talked about passion. Is that the definition?
It's passion, and we do this because we love it. You look at the simple farmers that we have here. We've got Elle, Kate, and myself. We've all got the farming backgrounds, and it ain't easy getting out there in the rain and the sleet and the snow and the 48-degree days to deal with what we deal with. We have terrible growing seasons. We have seasons with too much rain. We have fires. We have droughts. We have COVIDs. We don't do this for the massive paycheck at the end of the year, because we get paid yearly. That's hard work in itself. We do this because we love it. And that's ultimately what it is. We have the passion and the drive.
And I think it's interesting with our leadership journeys as well, is that, that idea of leaders sort of that have no self-interest. And I think the positions that we've all been sort of put in is you have to stand up at this time, and it's not for your own benefit. It's for people, all over the place. And so I think that's really important. And a lot of the time when you're putting yourself out there, you're actually risking more than you're gaining as well. And so that whole zero self-interest, I think it's really important, because it is a lot harder to actually stand up and be a leader in these spaces. I've always thought it's a lot easier for me to go out and be fencing all day, every day. It might be hot and, hard work, but it's actually the easy path. It's harder to go out and do the stuff that these women are doing, but we do it because passion, you love it.
Yeah, I was interested in that word, when you come from a sector that you're passionately involved in and you couldn't see yourself doing something else. I think that elevates something in people in leadership positions, because you've got a vested interest in wanting to see whatever industry sector you're in to do that. And I know on this panel it's around agriculture. When you're in the public eye and you're taking that leadership approach, does the pressure of what other stakeholders think impact what you're doing, or will you forge ahead irrespective? So is there a degree of trepidation when you're doing that? And why I ask this is that I am in the commercial seafood space in Queensland, and my association's been very vocally opposed to some things the government of the day is doing, in particular conservation groups, and we don't have a problem stepping out and putting a view out there. It can be challenging at times because you don't know what's going to come the other way. But yeah, from that leader perspective, is there a fear factor there, or do you just forge ahead because of the passion for your sector? I'll put that up to anyone who might want to respond here.
I'll go, Kate.
I think stakeholders and everything are really important, and actually having an understanding of where they're coming from. I know with the media that I've done in the past, I go out and I speak to as many people as I possibly can and get their perspectives, because I can't know everything, and no one can. And I actually think that when you're given a platform to speak on, whether that's a leadership position or, an opportunity in the media, you have a responsibility to actually represent more people than just yourself. And it is a real privilege to be given that. So I think making sure you're speaking to, as many people as you possibly can. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to agree with all these people. And I think the number one thing for me has always been, I've got to be totally true to myself, and I'll get everyone else's perspectives. And, that's really important. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what I truly believe. And I think that's all you can do as a leader, is make sure that you're true to yourself. And I think that keeps your authenticity. And I see that a lot with women leaders, is you really see that authentic self come through.
To add to that, there's definitely fear of what stakeholders will think of you when you do that authentic self. And I know we're going to get to challenges, but I think that the fear of industry or the tall poppy syndrome, I think the ag industry can be in a little bit of like silos of organisations. So you'll have all these different bodies that represent their members, and will you annoy one if you talk out of school with the other? And so I've definitely found that a challenge, and that fear before you do go forward in whether it's media or where I'm presenting to groups. And again, I think like Kate put, being authentic and being true to myself and my area of expertise is all I can do. But there's definitely that imposter syndrome sets in at times when if you feel of what other stakeholders will say, or when you do put yourself out there.
Holly, thank you for that. So why not let's segue, if we can, into leadership challenges and opportunities from your industry context. So I might go to Elle to start with on this one. So what do you see as, firstly, leadership challenges? So that bit first, and then the second, what do you think are the opportunities then, if any?
Firstly, I do want to say, like, there's so many opportunities in ag. I think that's easier to start with. Like, I've been given a heap of opportunities through sort of industry bodies or scholarships or something like that. So there is so many opportunities. And sort of from there, you get elevated into a leadership position. And that's when you realize sort of some of the challenges that can arise from that. So yeah, firstly, as these guys would know who stuck their neck out, like as soon as you stick your neck out, and even if you're talking about the most positive thing, you could talk about, you have people who want to sort of, cut down the tall poppy, and it can be your peers, even some people who are really close to you. They say, what are you doing? What are you doing talking the paper again, or whatever, I think some people have a bit of a scarcity mindset and think that if someone's doing well, it means that they can't. But it's, being a leader and sort of having the mindset that you are doing this for everyone, putting a positive image out there for your industry really helps, the whole industry, and it positively impacts more than just the people directly around you. So it can be really hard, and it's not fun to receive that. And I haven't even talked on controversial issues. Everything I talk about is positive and things. So I can't even imagine what Kate and Holly have gone through. But it can be hard, and it is good to have a group of peers who are in similar positions to sort of, talk about this stuff. There's nothing you can really do apart from just call up someone who's done a similar thing and just say, oh, well, that was shit, but, move on.
Thank you, Elle. I might go to Kate. Kate, what's your view around leader challenges and opportunities from an ag perspective, I guess? But you said you wear multiple hats, so I don't know, pick one or all of them, and if you could share that with us, great. Be good.
Yeah, I can't really silo them. I'm always just me. But yeah, I have different hats. So I suppose I can just wear them all. I think, as Elle said, now we are so fortunate with the amount of development programs there are in ag space, but then also the networking side. And I just love this industry so much, the supportive nature of it. And I think we all recognise how difficult farming can be, how, we go through natural disasters and these tough times, but then also recognising that, we are sometimes talking about controversial issues, and you actually do need that support. And I've just been blown away by the support network, the amount of people that, you'll go to an ag event and you'll meet all these people that you've spoken to online and you've never actually met in person, but you feel like you're so close because you have this really close supportive network with them. So I think that's a real opportunity. But also just being a young woman in ag, I remember in school I was told, don't go into the ag industry, it's male dominated, you'll get shot down, there's no point, why would you bother? And I'm so glad that I didn't listen to that, because I've had the complete opposite experience. At 19 years old, I was elected onto the local land services board by fellow landholders, and now I look after 40% of New South Wales. If that doesn't show that older men, and they are the landholders, they're the voters, want new, young, progressive people in this space, then I don't know what does. And I don't think it's just a female thing. I think they want young men just as much. There's this real turning point in this industry, and I feel really fortunate to be in that. I think the industry in general does have a lot of challenges. And I think the leaders that we're seeing come up now, and there's so many incredible ones, I feel really fortunate because we are going to go into a tough time. Like, and there's going to be natural disasters in the future, but also just with climate change and everything that's going on, we've got significant challenges coming through. But yeah, with the leaders that we've got, and the support that the industry and different groups have given to those people, I'm, not worried about the challenges quite as much.
Deb, what's your perspective there, mate?
Look, I love the opportunity side. I'm involved in a couple of programs where I get to go into classrooms and talk to kids about farming, and I get to put on my Farmer Deb hat and I get to tell them what colour my tractor is and all about cows and grass and the way that these kids look at you and the way they absorb the information, it's something that they don't, get taught in city schools. It's not something that resonates with them to go and get into the ag sector. And if I can encourage one kid a term, to pursue a career in agriculture, my job's done. It's, we've got a lot of innovative technology coming up, with climate change. We're looking at being carbon neutral by 2030. Like Kate said, we do have a lot of challenges, but we've also got the people coming through that are innovative and can financially back some of this stuff, and we can get it happening. I'm in the regen space at the moment, and some of the challenges I find there are, everyone should be regen based. That's great in theory. And, if we all could be, that would be great. But the fact is that we need every aspect of agriculture. And I'll say it 1,000 times over. We need croppers. We need our live export. We need our feedlots. We need it for our supply chain and food security. We need everyone. And we've all got to work together and use that as an opportunity, to go forward and to not make it a challenge.
Definitely that glass half full approach. Holly, what's your perspective here, mate? So it seems to me, sorry, before you answer, the tenor of the conversation is, there's a lot of opportunity to do some things. You've worked in that controversial issue, trying to use your words here. How do you navigate the challenge and how do you turn that into a potential positive? If we're going to stay along that track of let's look at what the opportunities are, how do you do that and what do you see from your perspective in industry?
I think, like the other ladies have talked about, there's lots of opportunities in agriculture in general. And while it can be difficult to be, the only female in the room or the youngest in the room, there's also huge opportunity to create change and to impact the people that you work with or the organisations that you engage with. I think it's like that changing of the tide kind of feeling for me of like the next generation so moving forward and the older generation is accepting and embracing, as Kate talked about, having young passionate people involved, not just females and males, just the best people for the job, the people with the most passion at the time for certain roles that come available. So I think the opportunities are there from looking at the challenges and facing them head on. So for me, I love problem solving, and Elle would be the same as a vet. Like, we do that every day. So when you can take that into a political problem or, for me, an advocacy problem, looking at things in a different way and how could you get people that have never collaborated before to collaborate? How do you get people in the room that have never worked together before? Those are kind of some of the ways that I've really tried to embrace challenges and create opportunities out of them.
Thank you for that. Leadership and gender from an ag perspective, where does it sit for you? Is the ship of state with that concern going well, or is it a sinking ship, or are we?
I think Kate's going to be also at this question, but I think it's getting there. Like, for me, I have definitely been the only female in the room, the youngest in the room for a long time. Not to offend anyone, the male pale stale club, can be challenging. Sorry, Eric. But they've also been my biggest supporter. So that it's kind of, there's two sides there. They've been the biggest challenge for me, like every day to, they don't want, just people not wanting change, people resisting change that needs to happen. And that can make ag look pale and stale in some respects. On the other hand, we've just got this amazing generation of young females who are pushing through it. Like, they've pushed the glass ceiling, they're pushing through any barriers, they are challenging the norms and taking leadership roles and being embraced to take leadership roles as well. While some of the industry may be seen to be typically male, I think that paradigm is, in that pivotal place and is completely shifting at the moment.
Just as a follow-up, and I'm assuming you've all had levels of training or some exposure to either professional development or leader development in the ag space. Does that development, that leader development, professional development, take into account gendered issues in the sector, or is it something that's not addressed in leader training? Because I myself have done a lot of it and I haven't seen too much of it in there. So is that something that's even worth worrying about if you're developing your leadership skills, to understand that the gender leader divide when you're being trained?
I don't know, I've done things like the ARLP trail course or even an AICD courses, and a lot of that, I suppose, is about preparing whoever's in the room. I don't know if they necessarily address that gender issue from my experience, and I think I'm hoping in the future that leadership is about the best person for the role, not about gender, and we're seeing that more and more. But I think a conflict resolution when we do any leadership training is probably where you end up having a lot of the skills that assist with the gender challenges or the challenges that I've faced in a role. And to be frank, it's because as a female, when you have those tough conversations with people, you come across as a bitch, let's be honest, rather than a male doing that same thing and coming across as, just being firm. So those are just those everyday conversations, and how important it is around tone and body language, and some of those day-to-day conversations as a female in a leadership role. And then I watch males in similar roles, we can have a completely different reaction from people.
Some programs, like leadership programs, where it's all women, and so I imagine the discussions there would be quite different. I actually, because we do work in an industry that has a lot of men in it, of course, I think it's really important to actually get the understanding from both sides, and the really interesting conversations during these leadership, these development programs that come up around gender is fascinating, because of course, there's different sort of styles when it comes to gender leadership. But yeah, I think it's really important to recognise both. And I think in this space in ag, it's interesting how many women are coming through the ranks. And it really is. I'm a board member for Local Land Services, and I think we've got more women than men now working in this space. It's really incredible. The thing that's lagging behind in terms of ag is women in management positions. It really is. Look at our statistics. I think we're close enough to 50-50 generally, but management's so far behind. So we really need to make sure, and I think we're seeing a progression where women are coming through, but that sort of succession, people in ag, they hang around for a really long time, and there are problems with that. But I think we're starting to see a change where women are coming up through the ranks, and that's really important, and it's overdue because it has been a totally male-dominated industry for a really long time. But that's why I think we're so lucky now. I actually heard an event the other day, and it was women in politics, and it was talking how someone said something women, these women that sort of go first in something, whether it's politics or ag, there are women that will climb the ladder and then pull it up behind them. And so that they're the only woman up in that space, rather than making sure that ladder is still down there and the other women can come up through them. And I've experienced so many examples of that, where women will climb the ladder, but then they also need to, they also empower the other young women and women in general to climb that ladder with them. And I think that's really important. And I think there's a real, most people in ag, most women in ag that I've experienced want to see more women at that table, because we don't want to be the only woman in that table. It can be daunting, and you stand out and you can actually get your voice heard, I think, at times then, but it's not fun being the only woman in a massive room full of older men.
You, Kate, Elle?
Yeah, I mean, just building on that, I just think that just straight back to it, it is just harder being a woman in leadership in ag. There's just no two ways about it. You cannot be a leader and be a woman and people naturally take direction from you. In our industry, the women are normally traditionally at home cooking lunch, cooking dinner, looking after the babies. And I find, as much the support as I get from men and the men in my life and things, I still think that there is just a huge way for people in ag to go to get their heads around it. And it frustrates me to no end that I still come across this idea that I should be at home. I have a son, be at home with him instead of out in the paddock. Or I went on a business trip the other day for a couple of weeks and they would say, oh, who's got the baby? Partner. He has a dad. Whereas if a male went on a trip like that, no one would say a single thing, it's just, they would just assume that, the dad takes care of the business. I find that there is still a lot of barriers.
Deb, over to you.
Yeah.
Do you have a view?
Yeah, I've always got a view. What I've noticed is that I've only sort of been in a leadership role for the probably last 18 months, nearly coming on to 2 years. I'm the new kid on the block here in this little powerhouse of women, and I'm probably the oldest of the lot. So for me, I've spent the last 20 years raising the kids and, watching the husband fence and watching him, build everything up. And I've had my head in books and tried to learn as much as I can to get the most out of our land that we have. Since the last 18 months, 2 years though, really since Holly sort of come along and come and put your voice out there, I've actually found that now he's the one taking the back seat and it's me forging the farm ahead. It's me pushing the business forward. It's me trying to build the empire. It's me that now consults with everyone. And I think a lot of the men in the industry do get a shock when they realise they are dealing with a woman at the farm gate. And don't get me wrong, at times it's really been beneficial. When we had the Rural Fire Service come through and put all our barriers up for when the fires were coming through, and they put up all those breaks and they ploughed down fences and they just mowed through everything. They did come back and they had to come back and rebuild everything that they did destroy, and they had to put our contour banks back where they were and, to allow our water to flow and things like that. And, the minute I rang, I actually had them down my valley quicker than any other man did. So it does have its benefits at times. It does have its challenges, because when they realise that sometimes, your stock agent is dealing with a woman, he's sort of, oh, yeah, all right, you reckon your cows are good. But then when they actually see the calves that you're putting on the back of a truck and they see how good they are, they do take a step back and they do sort of think, oh, wow, okay, what's she doing different? And I think as a woman farming, we do take a different approach to our livestock. We don't push them hard. We look after them. We care for them because we're nurturers. We're women. We do nurture, and we do manage to sometimes get the best out of what we are producing because of that reason. I think now a lot of the men are taking a step back when they realise they are dealing with a lot more women in the industry, because we can do it just as good as the men.
And I think, just on that, I've just sort of had this realisation is that I've heard people in the past go, oh, some of the best leaders are women. But I wonder if, because there are these barriers, and I think some women, we do have to work harder to get to that table. I wonder, some of these boards and committees and things, often the female, she's not there because she's popular or the most charismatic person in the room. She's there because she's worked her ass off to get there and probably hit a lot more barriers than the guys that have been there. And so I wonder if that this sort of these incredible women that are coming up through the ranks, it's actually because it's harder for us at times, because I'm with Elle, there's definitely still barriers.
And I think we have to prove ourselves more. We have to prove ourselves that we can do it just as good as the men can, if not better, for them to hear us. And sometimes that can be, frustrating for us. And that's our drive to push ourselves and to do it better.
But you still have your own experiences. And that's the thing. It's a different part of the industry. And I think that's what's really cool is that the sitting on the boards and stuff like that and all committees, that's one part of it. And it's great and stuff. But equally as important are the people that are kicking butt out in the paddocks and actually showcasing women excellence out in the paddocks. And I think that's wicked.
Before you all go, I do have a follow-up question for you, Kate, when you talked about who is the best kind of leader. But when you say if you've met a female leader and why that must be different, do you think there is potentially a gender difference, if anything, between the styles that women adopt as leaders versus blokes? So you all have talked a lot about collaboration, bringing networks in. Is it potentially a style thing? Not that men can't do collaborative leadership, but we bring different styles as human beings, let alone between the genders. Is that what you think could be the difference?
Yeah, and I'm sure like Holly could add on to this as well. But I think, and there's like so much literature on gender style, like leadership styles and things like that. And like as with anything, like gender does play a role sort of thing in certain aspects of it. And I think leadership is one where like, and this is like, it's being like quite generic and you can't lump everyone into the same box, because I know some fabulous collaborative men that have helped me so much in my career as well. But yeah, like I think there are differences, and I think, leading into like what Deb said as well about women being nurturers, like there are differences. And when people say, there's no difference between a man and a woman sort of thing, I say come out in the paddocks and try and lift some of the stuff the guys do, because I'll break my back doing that. Like there are differences between men and women, but that doesn't mean that like we can't equally be just as incredible leaders. It just might mean that we have strengths and weaknesses and that we need to recognise them and develop skills in different places.
Thank you for that. I'm just thinking some of the responses I've had here. I'm going to extend these conversations down the track, and I might come back to you as a panel because I've got the grey matters ticking over. I've got a few more questions. But before we go, because I've taken up a lot of your time, and I just want to end on asking each of you to give me maybe one opportunity you see and one challenge you see in leadership going forward. Elle?
I think there's like so much opportunity to continue to develop young people. Yeah, I got given a lot of opportunities over the last few years, and that's really changed me as a person and the direction my career went. So I think the best place to start is in schools and fresh out of schools, and the scholarships and things that can provide leadership training and opportunities there probably are the best way to develop leaders in agriculture. And challenges, I think, again, like from my perspective as a woman in ag, I do think that generationally we will see it be easier to be a woman in ag. And I do see being a woman as I don't like to think of it as a challenge, but I do know in reality it is. Not with everyone, but it doesn't go unnoticed.
Kate?
Yeah, I think an opportunity is really people recognising the importance of feedback. I think it's something that's like become really important for me through my leadership journey, is getting feedback from other people and what I can improve. And I think like even what I've done well, I think we often don't get enough feedback in our lives and in our jobs or anything. And I think there's a real opportunity to actually like have that conversation about the importance of it and how it really does help people develop. And I think one of the maybe challenges, or it's not really a challenge, but I think, we have a lot of leadership programs and it's great. And developing people's skills is one thing, but then giving them the opportunity to use those skills is another thing. And I think making sure that, after we do these programs sort of thing, there's usually like a big cohort that go out and they use those skills and they absolutely kick ass with them, which is amazing. But then there's people that maybe don't get that opportunity. And, sometimes you have to go out and create your own opportunities, but they don't have that opportunity to actually use them. And I think that's really important as well.
Thank you, Kate. Holly?
Well, I think the opportunity for me is, what I've been working on with the livestock leaders is just connecting and empowering the supply chain so that they can just have access to other people and other experiences, as well as that professional development. So I just think, the more we can connect and have that network of people around Australia or internationally is the absolute opportunity for further leadership growth in our next generation. And I suppose to coincide with that, the biggest challenge is industry silos, protectionism and individualist type nature that some ag organisations can fall into, and that lack of collaboration, of lots of members of council organisations. And so that's what I'm really passionate about, making sure, the pork industry talks to the cattle industry, or not setting ourselves up for this I suppose, like hidden kind of groups rather than all having access to each other.
Thank you, Holly. And to finish the discussion off, Deb, over to you.
Opportunities, there are endless. There are programs, there are scholarships, there are a lot of those out there. And like Kate said, it's a matter of utilising the skills and pushing it through. My biggest thing at the moment is I want to continue to get kids engaged in the ag sector. I'm happy to spend some time in the city and go around and encourage kids to come through, because they're going to be the ones that, are the next generation. My kids aren't, they're one of them at the moment's finishing his HSC and he's deciding what part of ag he wants to go into. And that's an exciting thought, that there will be the next generation coming through. What part does he want to get into? His options are endless, really. The challenge is getting our voice heard, I think. We do face a lot of challenges in the ag sector. We do face a lot, and without going down another whole path on this, we face a lot, and it's how we handle it, and it's how we hold our head up, and it's how we move forward. For me, I'd like to spend more time engaging with people and helping them to understand about agriculture, because we are missing a big link between city folk and rural folk. And I'm sure Kate sees that in her job, from being in Canberra now, she would see a lot of that missing link. I think Holly's doing a great job with the Livestock Collective, getting all the different collaborations to talk to each other and to stand as one. We want the pork to like the beef, and we want the beef to like the ducks, and we want everyone to be under that one umbrella, and we want to all be together. And I was a pretty naive little leader at the start. I thought there was only beef producers. I didn't know that we did live export, and I didn't know that we had feedlots, and I didn't know we had croppers, and I didn't know we had stud breeders. And, we're all a part of one big chain, and we all need each other, right down to the truck driver that transports our livestock from point A to point B. So it's about bridging that gap for me, and that's where I think being a part of the Livestock Collective, it's an amazing opportunity, and I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Deb, Holly, Kate and Elle, thank you for your time. For those listening, this has been the Talking Leadership Podcast. More conversations on the way. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll catch everyone on the next podcast.